Welcome into the Undercovers podcast. This edition of the Undercovers podcast, we have Ryan Tablet from the Shout podcast and Syracuse.com. Ryan, the Bills are 8-2 for the first time since 1993, their last Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, I think a start that a lot of Bills fans maybe weren't anticipating. I'm sure some of the diehards were, but after parting ways with so many key players in the offseason and Brandon Beane, not saying it was a tear down or a rebuild or anything like that, but kind of saying that maybe expectations had to be reset. We're sitting here after 10 weeks and they've won 8 of their first 10 games, first time since, like you said, 93 that they've been there. They have a pretty significant margin of lead in the AFC East, so all things have gone pretty well for Buffalo to date.
Oh, yes. It hasn't. You can't really script much better of a start to the season than the Bills have had compared to their counterparts in the AFC East, for sure. And, they were all supposed to win the division this year. Oh, yeah. Well, where have they gone? Where are they now, huh? I actually said the Bills were supposed to go 10-7 this year. Well, they're 2 wins away from tying my preseason record, and 3 from proving me wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the Bills almost have as many wins as the rest of the AFC East combined at this point, right? Because the Jets and Patriots each have 3 apiece, and Miami just picked up their 4th last night.
Yeah, so I think right now, like the AFC East has like 9 wins right now, and the Bills are at 8 in terms of the other teams, that is, besides the Bills. So they finally passed Buffalo in terms of overall wins, but it took them 10 weeks to do so.
And Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the magic number for the East right now is 3 at this point.
Yeah, I haven't even looked into the magic number yet, but I mean, it would take a monumental collapse for the Bills not to win that division. I mean, if I look at the remaining schedules for the other AFC East teams, the Dolphins by far have the easiest path to potentially getting their season maybe off the or on the rails and get back in the playoff picture. But to catch up to Buffalo, I don't see it. The Bills swept the regular season series against them. So they have those head-to-head wins. And I think, right now Miami, if anything, they would be thrilled to kind of sneak in it with that last playoff spot.
Especially considering the teams they already have for now.
Well, they still have some challenging games too, though, because San Francisco seems like they're starting to get healthy. They have to play Houston as well, and then Green Bay on Thanksgiving should not be an easiest matchup by any stretch. Especially, we all know that that offense does not perform particularly well in the cold, so that should be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I mean, none of the teams underneath Buffalo really can have any more slip-ups this season. You almost anticipate it. The conference as a whole, though, has been a little bit of a letdown this year in terms of what you're seeing across the league. Now, that being said, you could make the case that there could be 3 AFC North teams between the Ravens, the Steelers, and if the Bengals can get back on track there, potentially in the playoffs. AFC West, you can talk about Denver potentially being in the race for a wild card spot. In the way that the Chargers are playing now, they'll be in the mix. So, and then obviously of the Chiefs as the top dog in that division. So it will be very difficult. There would have to be some letdowns elsewhere, but the rest of the teams in the AFC minus Buffalo, they've dug themselves into some pretty difficult spots here at this point in the year.
Absolutely. And it's not going to get easier for many of them. Now, Miami, yes, as we said, I actually think they can beat Houston as long as they stay fully healthy. I think they actually do have a fairly decent shot of beating Houston. Green Bay is just such a question mark. I don't really know what kind of Green Bay you're going to see, but at the end of the day, they remember what happened last time they played Green Bay when it really mattered, when Tua went off the rails and then literally went off the rails with the concussion that no one looked at mid-game. That was in 22, I believe. And that derailed the whole season right there.
Yeah, he had some very, it seemed pretty clear based on the hip, then the interceptions that he threw after the fact that were, not the type of throws that he generally makes. They were just easily read by Green Bay. That tells you that he wasn't in a good spot in that matchup in that game. And you're right, that kind of derailed their entire season right then and there.
Oh
I
yeah,
was even nervous about him last night when he did that head first tackle. It looked like he got hit in the back of the head with I forget his name, but I think it was Bozeman, maybe the linebacker. Maybe not Bozeman,
it
but
was.
the linebacker on LA. He took some hard hits to the back of his head last night.
Yeah, that was
Absolutely
not good to see.
No, and when you're an athlete like that, I think it's just second nature to dive for a ball and to make certain plays, and you don't even think about it. Even a player that has suffered so many concussions, it's just like like I said, you're going for the football. You're not thinking of, I can't make a play like this, I could put myself at risk. You're just making a football play that he's probably done many times from being a kid through high school, college, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. That's what he did at Alabama all them years too. Back when he was actually very mobile, almost Kyler Murray style mobile. He was never that good. But
I was gonna say I wouldn't go that far, but let's get on to the main focus tonight. Ryan, we're about halfway. Well, we're just over halfway through the season for the Bills. My first question to you is, who is your biggest surprise so far about just over halfway through the season? Who has been your biggest disappointment so far for the Bills?
Boy, okay. So biggest surprise. I think I'm going to have to go with the safety duo, Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin. And, neither of these guys are going to be named all pros or make it to the Pro Bowl, but they've done a really good job on the back end of this defense where for many years, Bills fans were very spoiled with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. And when you lose both of them with, Hyde still sitting there in free agency, but wasn't sure if he was going to come back and play. And then Poyer obviously joining the Dolphins after the Bills released him. There was a lot of uncertainty there. And, we saw this season when they had to put in Cole Bishop in a game, how they got beat deep on a play. That's a rookie going through the lumps and things like that. But they've shown Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin that they're in the right spot on passing downs. They're not going to get beat deep. They still have some misses. DeMar Hamlin took a poor angle on a big run against Jonathan Taylor this past week. He was a little bit close to the line there, so it wasn't all his fault. It's not like he was coming from deep at the safety position, but just kind of missed him there. So they haven't been perfect, but they have been a really good surprise. And then if I had to go with biggest disappointment, I guess I'll go with two players. One would be Curtis Samuel, and I don't think it's really his fault. Mm-hmm. Turf toe at the beginning of the year, shoulder injury, but the expectations when the Bills signed him, 3-year, $24 million deal, $8 million on average. That was the big free agent signing, and he really hasn't come close to living up to that contract. And like I said, he suffered turf toe in the preseason. I think that affected him early on in the year, dealing with a shoulder injury. The way that the Bills have been playing their wide receivers on the boundaries and in the slot, you're not going to get Shakir out of the slot very often. You can put Samuel on the outside, but they like obviously having Keon Coleman out there when he's healthy. They traded for Amari Cooper. He's kind of the odd man out in that area, but that would be one option. And, Ed Oliver, I don't think has repeated the performance that he had 1 year ago. I could say the same for Daquan Jones. I feel like the defensive tackle position hasn't played at the level that maybe I was expecting this season. So those would be some other options there too.
I definitely feel like the one about Curtis Samuel is very accurate because, man, when he even in Washington alongside Terry McLaurin had his moments where you went, man, this guy is good. Man, if this guy could have a real quarterback throwing him the football one time in his career, he'd probably be better than Terry McLaurin. Then he comes here and the turf toe happens. It's just such a shame, really.
Yeah, injuries obviously play a role in all of this. And you look at the relationship that he had with Joe Brady. You thought that would obviously help him and the way he was used there. And you go back to that 2020 season where he had over 1,000 total yards. Some of it was due to the fact that McCaffrey got hurt that year, so they were lining him up in the backfield. They were giving him a lot of carries. They were running him out of the backfield on routes in terms of, as a pass catcher, also as a traditional wide receiver at times too. And I think some of that versatility and ability to use him in creative ways isn't there right now because you do have Cook running the ball so well out of the backfield, and Ray Davis can be thrown into that. Even Ty Johnson, when he gets put in there, he's making plays. So you're not going to put him in the backfield. And in terms of, the wide receiver position, it didn't happen early this year because of the injury. And then you trade for Amari Cooper, and that just kind of knocks him down and out of the depth chart. Mind you, he should be risen back up right now based on the injuries that are going on with Cooper and with Keon Coleman. But for a time being there, he was kind of knocked down in terms of his snap count. They love Mac Hollins too, and Hollins, to his credit, great blocker. He has made some plays in the passing game, just like he did right before halftime against the Colts with that 40-plus yard reception downfield. So there's just a lot of guys that they can mix in and out, and I think everything between the injury and that, it's really affected his overall stat line in play this year.
Oh, absolutely. That's how I felt about it too, because you just wonder where on earth he's been all year. And then you realize, ever since he got that turf toe, it's just lingered all season and he can't really get over it. So I'm glad at least then that he's on a 3-year deal, because you still got 2 years to see if Curtis Samuel ever melds into the offense or not.
Yeah, and I would think next year there's going to be a better chance for him to kind of be a contributor. Who knows what happens with Amari Cooper, but he's on an expiring deal. Keon Coleman in year 2, though, you raise expectations in terms of how teams are going to play him. You would think that would free things up a little bit. What you have in Shakir. You hope that Kincaid takes another step. And with all those other guys taking the step forward, you hope that it takes some of the pressure and some of the attention off of him, where then he can go out and show why the Bills were so eager to sign him in free agency.
That actually brings me to the question I had for you, Ryan. Aside from the other one that you answered the other night on the Shout through the Shout Insider thing when I was talking about Taron Johnson, but that was me. It would have to be me. It would only be me. But I know we just discussed about Curtis Samuel having the turf toe and the injury and all of that. But in your opinion, do you actually believe that, other than the obvious turf toe, the lack of Curtis Samuel's presence in the offense has been related to how well Keon Coleman has played in the past few games this season so far?
Yeah, I think Keon Coleman has exceeded expectations in terms of what you wanted out of your rookie wide receiver. Every year there's a lot of hype around certain wide receivers in the draft, whether they're first round, second round picks. And more times than not, by the end of the season, their stats look pretty pedestrian. And that's to be expected, because no matter how good you are at the college level, coming into the pros, there's a big learning curve. And there are guys that obviously they're drafted to the right scheme, the right fit, like a Puka Nacua last year, being a day 3 pick. There are great players taken in the first round, like the Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons of the world. But if you look at this draft class, Marvin Harrison Jr. has had some moments, but it's been an up and down season. You look at his performance against the Bills, then he bounces back the next week with a huge performance in week 2. But he's ebbed and flowed a little bit. It took Rome Odunze, who was supposed to be one of the top 3, and I still think he is, don't get me wrong. But he just had his first, I believe, 100-yard game last week, not this past weekend, but 2 weekends ago. Neighbors is the real deal, but he's had some injury issues. So, a lot of these guys aren't the proverbial savior, and they didn't need Keon Coleman to be that proverbial savior for this offense. But when he was drafted, there were people that said, it's the 40 time. It's he looks a little bit slow. He looks really raw. Is this a good pick? And he's just gotten better and better each week that he's been out there in terms of knowing where to sit against the zone, winning those one-on-one matchups along the sideline, the jump ball in the end zone. Even if separation, which I think separation will always be an issue for him, he's finding ways to win using his body like a basketball player at times, boxing out, and obviously has that basketball background. So he has definitely been a bright spot for this offense. Unfortunate that he suffered the wrist injury against Miami and missed last week against the Colts, going to miss this week against the Chiefs. Who knows Obviously have the bye week, but then after that, maybe he misses one more. Maybe it's about a 4-game type of deal or a 4-week deal with the bye week kind of mixed in there. And then at least you get him back for the home stretch. But he has definitely been a guy that I think the Bills, looking back on it, are very happy with their selection in terms of who is there, because he'll always be, compared to Xavier Worthy, who has been very hot and cold this season. He'll always be compared to Xavier Legette, who you're seeing him step up a little bit there in Carolina based on opportunities and injuries. But overall, I think Coleman has held his own in terms of where the Bills drafted him.
Oh, yes. And this is another I tried to tell everybody moment, because Ben and I, both being Florida State fans, we knew exactly where we were going with Keon Coleman. And if Keon had gone anywhere else, he would have definitely not been the kind of impact receiver that you see now. Carolina would have been a horrible fit for his scheme. Yeah. Kansas City especially. They didn't need a guy like Keon. They needed what they got in Xavier Worthy, a speedster, their own Tyreek Hill, pretty much. We didn't need that. We needed a physical guy that can catch pretty much whatever we throw his way. I know that he's had his drops, but it's the NFL. He's not going to be able to moss people like he did in college consistently. So I knew it was coming.
He did do that against Tariq Woolen.
Yeah, that was the best thing ever. Reminded me a lot of that moss against Clemson when he was still with FSU. But I told people he was going to be the guy for the Bills. No one believed me, and now look at him. Other than the wrist injury, he has had his moments.
Definitely had his moments as a receiver. Been a great blocker as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ryan, Amari Cooper, do you think it's a possibility we see him on Sunday? I know Sunday's definitely much more of a pivotal matchup, compared to last week's game in Indy, and they probably didn't really need him, which was obvious just based on the game overall.
So, here's how I look at it. 2 weeks ago, the Bills called him 50-50 for the matchup against the Dolphins, and he didn't play. And this week he was listed as questionable, and he didn't play. So you would think in terms of, okay, if he was 50-50 2 weeks ago, didn't play last week, it looks promising that he would play against the Chiefs. But my counterpoint to that would be, if I'm Amari Cooper, if I'm his agent, if I am the Bills, I might sit there and say, yes, this is a very big regular season game that we would love to win. But with the bye week next weekend after that, could we give him 2 more weeks and make sure he is 100% with the wrist, because you need to be able to block. If you catch a football, you're going to be tackled to the ground, or you're going to re-aggravate that injury. The pain tolerance of just catching the football in general. If you're out there, you're going to probably get jammed by the opposition. So they have to weigh this. I think that he could go in terms of overall being able to go out there and contribute, maybe limited reps. But it wouldn't shock me if the Bills say, we're going to go another week without Coleman, without Cooper, let the chips fall where they are, and then post-bye week, we're going to get Cooper back at 100% health, and he's going to have all that time since he's been out to know the ins and outs of this playbook. So when he does come back, there's not going to be any issues about not knowing where to line up or what to do. And there was the one touchdown catch where it looked like he asked Keon Coleman what he was doing on the play. You're not going to see that anymore because he's been diving into the playbook these last few weeks already. And you have to think, as nice as a win would be, we've seen the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season and then come up short in the postseason. Mm-hmm. You have to think of the long game here. And are the Bills going to get the number 1 seed in the AFC? Obviously, a win against the Chiefs on Sunday would put them in the race for that and put them 1 game back of the Chiefs. But the Chiefs' schedule the rest of the way is not that daunting or challenging compared to
they still need to lose another game then.
Yeah, and for all these close calls they've had this season, they found a way to win all those matchups where, now they've looked a lot better the last 2 weeks with Hopkins there at wide receiver. Mahomes isn't turning the ball over as much. He's throwing more touchdowns. It's helped Travis Kelce. They're going to get Pacheco back sooner rather than later. They're trending in a good direction heading into the playoffs. I would just kind of say it might be better to hold off. And, it also works where if we run into the Chiefs in the postseason, that being the Bills, they don't have any personal experience of how to play against Amari Cooper and Keon
Right.
Coleman. And that could benefit Buffalo in a playoff matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Amari Cooper would definitely be great to have, on the field, even though that he might not even have to get onto the box score with the catch, but just him on the field just makes a difference because it allows, other players to get separation. We've seen that several times throughout the season, with, the closest example would be against Seattle, where separation numbers were through the roof, but it also turns into a game where how do the Bills view this game? And for many views this game as a must win because seeding, the one seed is super important. How do you think the Bills view this game? Do you feel like they're viewing this in a way like this is a must win? Or do you kind of view this as like this is just an important regular season game against a rival that we've seen several times?
Yeah, I don't think they would call this a must-win game. It would be a great game to win, like I said, for the reasons of giving the Chiefs their first loss, putting them in position to potentially be that number one seed. I think the Bills are playing the long game, knowing that post-bye week you have some daunting games against the 49ers. You have the Lions. You have the Rams mixed in there. I know the Rams looked absolutely awful last night against the Dolphins, but it's a week-to-week league, and when that offense is clicking, they're a tough unit to kind of hold down, and that'll be a game on the road for Buffalo. So they're going to have to kind of hold their own against some pretty good offenses and a team like Detroit that's great on both sides of the ball for the most part, more times than not. They would rather probably be in the mix to try to win those games in terms of helping their potential seeding. The bye would be great, but I think that the Bills would probably be okay being the 2 or the 3 seed, letting the chips fall where they are, and trying to potentially win the 2 seed. I think is maybe the end game there. So hold off against playing the Chiefs as long as possible. Maybe if things break their way, depending on how everything falls, because Baltimore's had some baffling losses too. If they can get Baltimore and Kansas City to play each other somehow, some way before they would have to play them, that would also be great. But it's a big game, but I don't think the Bills are sitting there saying we have to win this game to make this season count, because we've seen them win a lot of regular season games against Kansas City, and at the end of the day, it hasn't meant much.
Oh, I run the playoff matchups, the ideal ones in my head consistently. All I hope, Pittsburgh beats Baltimore round 1, and then Baltimore is gone. They have historically struggled against Pittsburgh, and it's either going to be their struggles or it's going to be Mike Tomlin figuring out how to win a playoff game for the first time since 2016. So that's one hope. And then the other one, Bengals sneak their way into the playoffs, draw Kansas City round 1. If both of those happen, then, oh man, we could be in for a very good outcome. But we got to get the 1 seed for that to work out.
Right.
And
yeah.
That's a very tall task itself.
Absolutely. That's the tough part, because, you look and the Ravens are a toe away from beating the Chiefs in week 1. And, the Buccaneers could have gone for 2 in regulation, or if they had won the coin toss, who knows what happens there. Atlanta came close to knocking them off. The blocked field goal by against Denver this past weekend. There's been more than enough opportunities. I'm not even listing them all right now where they could have lost
the Tampa Bay game as well. If Tampa went for 2 at the end of the second half in that game.
Yep.
They should be 3-6.
So there could be there could have been a lot of losses there mixed in.
Speaking on the injury front, how is Dalton Kincaid's status looking for Sunday? And if he doesn't go, though, I mean, Dawson Knox has had some pretty decent success against Kansas City. So, I mean, maybe getting him more involved in the passing game isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, we haven't been given a clear update yet on, Dalton Kincaid. I think we'll probably have a better understanding tomorrow when we hear from the coaching staff, when we see his status in terms of participation, limited, did not practice, or full participant. It's tough because he exited the game. He got back in for a few snaps, looked like it was definitely hindering him, and then he was pulled out for the remainder of that game. If he doesn't play, though, like you said, that boosts up Dawson Knox. We saw Knox make a big play downfield last week against the Colts. One area where he is superior to Kincaid is as a blocker. In this game against the Chiefs, they're going to still have to try to run the ball. I know the Chiefs are excellent in terms of their run defense. Chris Jones up front, but they have a lot of guys on that defense overall that swarm to the ball and have stopped a lot of really good running backs. But, the Bills are going to probably test their strength against Kansas City's strength, run the jumbo personnel, let James Cook get some opportunities, Ray Davis. Allen's going to have his handful of design quarterback runs, not to mention the times that he takes off and scrambles on passing plays too. So Knox helps in that area in terms of the blocking perspective as well. It's not a huge disservice in terms of that, but Kincaid, although he hasn't been a major factor this year in terms of as much as I thought he was going to be, he can still create on the catch, get the yards after the catch, make plays downfield. So it would certainly hurt from the perspective of potentially being without three of your better pass catching weapons if Cooper can't go, if Kincaid can't go, and then we already know Coleman's been ruled out.
Mm-hmm. Run the ball.
Yeah.
Pound the run, stop the run. I learned that Tomlinism back in 2010.
Yeah,
Bills need to do just that.
They do, and that's a tall task. Like I said, Kansas City is very good at stopping the run, and Kareem Hunt's come in for Pacheco, and he's kind of reinvigorated his career there. I think it's 5 touchdowns, 400 some yards rushing. He's looked the part when given opportunities. Pacheco could be back for this weekend. They just opened his practice window. A lot of the times that doesn't necessarily mean they're back for that first game. As we know with what the Bills are going to do with Milano here, he's not going to play against Kansas City.
And we saw that with Nico Collins, right? He was just brought off IR, and he sat out the Sunday night matchup.
Yeah, so it's no guarantee, but Pacheco could potentially even play, which Pacheco and Hunt would pose some problems for Buffalo's run defense.
Mm-hmm.
So with the matchup on this weekend, with a big, massive national media audience this weekend, how do the Bills beat the Chiefs? You mentioned, they have to stop the run, and they also have to, run the football. Running the football against the Chiefs defense is going to be difficult. So do you kind of feel like it's kind of be more the same that we've seen from the Bills offense, offensively, screens to open up the run game, to open up the play action? Or do you think, the Bills take a different approach to this game? Maybe it's, let's stick to the run and then let the passing game take over through there.
Yeah, I almost wonder if, Joe Brady goes into his bag a little bit in this game. It didn't feel like he had to do much against the Colts in terms of new wrinkles. You're at home, so you could do a lot more pre-snap motion where you don't have to worry about the opposing crowd kind of throwing the timing off, so that could help them a little bit here. I like the short passing game. I like the screens. I will say, though, that Chiefs defensive line, they have some active hands there. Karlaftis has really come on and been developed into a really strong player for them. We know what Chris Jones can do on the interior. They bring in Josh Uche from via trade. They have other guys there too. So if they, get their hands on a pass, that could lead to bad things. In the simplest terms, for the Bills to win this game, they have to win the turnover battle. Josh Allen can't have 2 interceptions in this game like he did last weekend against the Colts. They have to be good in that area. And, Mahomes, for all the interceptions he has thrown this year, like I said, with Hopkins in the lineup, he's played a lot cleaner games, hasn't had those turnover issues necessarily in the last 2 weeks. And this is a huge Greg Rousseau and Von Miller game.
Yes.
They need to win off the edge. Watching that Denver game last weekend against the Chiefs, they were wreaking havoc on Mahomes all game long, and a lot of it had to do with their edge rushers beating the left tackle and even the right tackle of the Chiefs consistently. And Greg Rousseau is having a career year. I know it's not necessarily always showing up as a sack on the stat sheet. He had a strip sack, though, against Flacco this past week. He's been very consistent in terms of his pressures and hurries, excellent at setting the edge. And then Von Miller had an outstanding game. I know, again, no sacks or anything like that, but his pressure rate was one of the best in the league. using Pro Football Focus's metrics. He was able to move Flacco off his spot. Flacco felt his pressure a few times in that game. Both of them need to be at their best for the Bills to win this game on Sunday.
If only we could have Groot go watch some old prime James Harrison tape and figure out every way to manipulate James Harrison's old game, we would have an absolute demon on our defensive front, and that would just be incredible. Like, if Groot ever listens to this show and hears me say that, just go find the man and have him give you all his old tapes, man. Turn Groot into prime James Harrison, and we will have a rush on defense that will just be incredible.
Yeah, not opposed to that, but you are seeing the gains in his development. Still a young kid, because when they drafted him, he was one of the younger players in that draft class. Obviously, the Bills have a tough decision to make here soon. I think they will extend him, but how much that ends up being will be very interesting.
Oh, absolutely. I hope they do.
Right, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. Do you want to give the audience, where they can find you, and obviously the Shout text line, become an insider, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the Shout Insider text line. We've shared the information on that on our social media pages. You can text the number. Oh boy, 716-528-6727 off the top of my head. I think Matt Print will be proud because I'm 99% sure I just nailed that. But we also have a URL that's attached to all of our YouTube videos. You can find me on X, on Blue Sky. I had Bills fans asking to get on Blue Sky, so I did that. At Ryan Talbot Bills is my username on all social media platforms. You can find my work at syracuse.com and nyup.com.
All right. Thank you again, Ryan, and go Bills. And
again,
hopefully
Ryan.
the Bills get one out this weekend.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yes,
have a great night,
you,
everyone.
You as well.
All right. You have a great night as well. All right. That was great as always from Ryan Talbot. So let's transition now into our standouts from Sunday's game. I'll start, but I know who Connors is, so I won't steal it from him. But I got to go with Quentin Jefferson. That man didn't play much in Cleveland, pretty much rode the bench. They cut him. He came back to Buffalo, and at a critical point of the game, after Allen threw what seemed like a back-breaking interception, Indy was going down the field to possibly tie the game at that point and steal back momentum. That was a game with quite a few momentum swings. On that 4th and 1, he had a really big sack on Joe Flacco, which actually, ended up giving the Bills better field position to then drive down, score, take some time off the clock and score a field goal and give themselves even more breathing room. And that's, like Ryan mentioned earlier, that's been one of the bigger disappointments, in my opinion, on the Bills defense. And, if you remember last week during the trade deadline and prior, everyone was clamoring for support on the interior, and Brandon Beane did that. It maybe wasn't necessarily the people we wanted. I know I wasn't really too pleased with bringing back Phillips and Jefferson of all people. Now, Phillips, I think he did more morale support, with him lifting up Josh Allen on the sidelines, but Jefferson made some plays on Sunday. So I have to really give a huge shout out to Quentin Jefferson. He was my standout on Sunday's game.
Smaller, I will go also the smaller route, in this case, Quentin Jefferson, Jordan Phillips, both, stat sheet wise doesn't look as much, but obviously they did more than what they did on the stat sheet. You go to the stat sheet, you also look at Matt Collins, 4 receptions for 86 yards. He led all Bills receivers in receiving yards in this game. And that
he made some big catches, Paul. The one before halftime, it led to a field goal. But if I'm not mistaken, on the Bills' touchdown drive, he had a big catch too. I think it was maybe a 3rd and long, 2nd and long, and Allen found him on the sideline as well. I like that pick.
Oh,
He
yeah.
also leads the Bill. He's also tied with Keon Coleman with the most passing touchdowns this season. They both have 3, and both of them lead the Bills in receiving touchdowns. He's also had the 4th longest catch of the season. With that 44-yarder, I believe that was against Indy. So even though receptions and stats don't look great. I think he only has like 180 receiving yards this season, Matt Collins, but he's been an important depth piece to the Bills wide receiver room. And he's doing what, his contract basically tells him he has to do. He's on a 1 year smaller deal, not making a whole bunch of money, but he's just playing his role and he's doing it well. And it's starting to turn out to be, maybe Josh is one of Josh's favorite red zone targets. 3 touchdowns, I believe all of them are in the red zone. So it's like Josh Allen is starting to trust Matt Collins. The Bills are starting to trust Matt Collins. It didn't start great for Matt Collins, but he's starting to turn it around. He's playing that role that he's supposed to be playing, and it's improving the Bills' offense week by week.
Oh, you got that right. Absolutely world-class performance by Matt Collins. Free the feet. But no, I think it's my turn now, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
think we all know where you're going.
you do know where. If you know me, you know where I'm going. Anybody watching the show, if you know me, you know exactly where I'm going. I don't even have to. I could literally just say you already know and stop. But I'm going to preface this actually because we had Ryan on, and this is a very funny little segue. So if you're not a part of the Insider Shout text, they actually did do a round of questions for their own show where you could ask anything you wanted to ask, and they would read off a singular question. So without even thinking, I just straight up said it. I asked them, what is it going to take for Taron Johnson to win player of the year? And of course, obviously, I didn't realize, oh, wait a minute, he got injured in the beginning of the season, so he really isn't going to win defensive player of the year. But I'll tell you what, Taron Johnson played like a defensive player of the year last against the Colts. That first pick 6 nearly got his hands on a couple of more balls by Flacco. I mean, that man was everywhere all the time, all across the field, doing exactly what Taron Johnson does best. I mean, there is no doubt that the cornerback room is much more stable, much more explosive when Taron Johnson's on the field, even though, he's not an all-purpose cornerback. He's a nickel cornerback, but he plays nickel cornerback better than some actual, some all-purpose quarterbacks actually play the role. I mean, let's just be completely honest with ourselves. Taron Johnson really was the standout for me, and that's, like I said, that's a little obvious. So,
You look at his interception, even though it was the first interception of the game and was the first scores for the Bills in that game, it turned out to be a very important score, even though it was the opening touchdown of the game. Just how the game kind of played out, how it was kind of close, in that first half. It turned out to be an important game because, obviously Josh Allen had those 2 interceptions. Those 2 interceptions turned into points for the Colts, which allowed the Colts to stay in it. So Taron Johnson's 7 points, gave the Bills added assurance, even though it was the opening touchdown of the game. It was added insurance before any other insurance was capitalized throughout the game.
100%. Now we'll briefly discuss keys to the beating the Chiefs. I know Ryan kind of already mentioned them a little bit, but to me, my biggest key is going to be getting to Mahomes and containing him in the pocket. As we know, he is so good at escaping pressure and just extending the play and getting away and even scrambling. Like that playoff game in Kansas City, the divisional round, it'll be now 3 years ago, from this year. But how many plays did he make where he just was able to get away from pressure, scramble for a first down? Like, I know he didn't have a ton of rushing yards, but if you counted like all of his total yards covered on the ground, he had to probably cover like 80 total yards just with all the scrambling he did and running away. So I think Von's going to have to get in the backfield, Rousseau's going to have to, he's been creating pressure this season and using those long arms to disrupt passes. But I think they're going to have to get home and turn some of these pressures into sacks, because Mahomes is that special type of player where even if you get back there and get pressure, he can still evade you and make a crazy sidearm throw. So to me, it's going to start at the line of scrimmage. And like Ryan kind of already mentioned earlier, defending the run is critical. So I think just it's going to be one in the trenches. And to me specifically, if the defensive line comes to play and has the game that they possibly can have, especially since the Chiefs tackles have been a little bit of a weakness this year, I think the Bills can have a very successful day on Sunday.
Speaking to your point, right, Ben, Von Miller, I believe, I got to quickly find it just to find the exact number. I think he won 31% of his 31% of the time at the line of scrimmage. So, he's starting to turn back into old Von Miller. He came back from the injury after his suspension. He started a little slow, but here he is. A few weeks post suspension, he's starting to turn into what we saw him do in the first 4 weeks of the season before he got suspended. Was he's getting the pressure. He was able to win at the line of scrimmage, but he's not getting home. Root, same thing. He's able to win at the line of scrimmage. They're able to put pressure on it, but they're not really sacking anyone. So what we saw on Sunday was they were starting to get home, and hopefully they do the exact same thing this weekend. We all know that Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, they're susceptible to turnovers. Top of the league in interceptions for Patrick Mahomes. So you got to get to Patrick Mahomes, and I think that's a super important key. But when I look at this game and I'm like, how do you beat the Chiefs? This game will come down to one of two things: outscoring the Chiefs, or you have to outcoach the Chiefs. And there's been points and times where you have points and times where McDermott, you get close to the end of the game, something happens. It's either he has to make his choice or he doesn't make a good choice. So I think it comes down to coaching, but it's not really a key here. But, it's just something I just thought in my head, like this is probably going to come down to you either outscore them or you have to outcoach them. So there's something, to watch and monitor throughout the game. How does the pressure of this game turn out to go either way between Reed and McDermott?
Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to be all jumping over about, McDermott not being, in a good position to outcoach Andy Reid, but we have seen some real blunders from Andy Reid the past few years. But definitely McDermott's going to have to get on his, on the ball, win these challenges. Don't do it. Don't throw the flag for a stupid challenge. Please don't do that. Just manage the clock. You literally outcoach Andy Reid. It is not that hard from the perspective of, we got to outcoach a genius. Yeah, Andy Reid is a genius, but a lot of his genius is because of who he has under center. So stop the guy under center. Groot, have a day. Von Miller, have a day. Clog up their running lanes so Kareem Hunt can't get free. Keep a guard on Xavier Worthy so he doesn't use his breakneck speed to get away, and hope for the best.
Just you will hope at points in time, Rapp and Hamlin will turn out to be, important safekeepers in this game, because, if you're the Chiefs, you want to push the football down the field as much as you can. But, that's how defending Worthy comes into play. How are the Chiefs going to use Worthy? Are they going to use them in the Tyreek Hill type mode? Or are they going to try to put them in different pockets, kind of make the Bills defense think a little bit, and that could possibly open them up over the top. So, defending the over the top of the field is going to be important, with Hopkins and Worthy both on the field together.
100%. Let's get into our game picks for the week. And Paul, if you have the updated standings.
I do. Ben, you're starting to pull away just a little bit. You're starting to pull away a little bit, but me and you both went 6-2 last week.
Okay, very solid.
Connor, you're hovering around 500. You went 4-4 last week. The week prior, you went 4-3.
Connor, lock in, bud.
Man, yeah, I gotta lock in. My lack of ball knowledge is showing again. I gotta lock in.
You gotta start locking in, but me and you are tied in the standings as Ben continues to pull away. Let's start with the first game in the schedule. Eagles Commanders on Thursday Night Football out in Lincoln Financial Field. This is really just a battle for the NFC East division right now. Commanders, not really great against 500 teams, but they're able to beat up against some of the smaller teams. Where are we leaning?
Yeah, you actually just completely spoiled my pick, by the way, because I was going to mention that same thing, but I'm glad you did. The Commanders are beating up against weaker teams. I know they did beat Cincinnati, who might be a little bit better than the record indicates, but their defense really has not been all that strong, which they proved again on Thursday when they had a pretty big commanding lead, and they just let Lamar basically stunt all over them in the second half. So I'm going to go with Philly, though, because they do have the advantage at home. I believe they're on a 5-game win streak now, if not more, since A.J. Brown came back from injury. They're kind of rounding into form and being the team we all expected them to be last year. I know they had some injuries and things kind of fell apart, but part of it was coordinator related. But Vic Fangio, like he did last year in Miami, has the defense playing very well towards the end of the season. It seemed like it was almost a similar pattern. It took a little bit for his system to get installed and guys to kind of be in the right place, but the defense has gelled as of late. The offense looks very strong, and Saquon's playing like an offensive player of the year candidate. He probably won't win it just because of the season Derrick Henry's having, but I'm going to go Philly.
All right. But yeah, you could literally, because it's a divisional game and with how both teams have been playing, you can literally flip a coin. And wherever the coin lands, it's not a bad pick. Personally, I think I am going to go with let me go back to the game. I believe this game is being played
Eagles Commanders. It's in Philly.
It is in Philly?
It's in Philly.
Okay, yeah. Then I'm also going to take the Eagles solely for the fact that they're playing in Philly, again, a divisional game with both teams looking pretty good right now. The Commanders were literally a jump away from beating the Steelers in Pittsburgh. So I'm still taking Philly. They're playing at home.
Philly has the home field advantage, in this game, but the Commanders, even though they're not playing well against 500 teams, they're going to have to at one point have to beat a 500 team, and maybe this is the one that they get. And if you want to be a good playoff team, you want to make a statement, do it in prime time, do it on the road. I'll take Washington for that matter.
All right. I mean, again, it's literally a coin flip of a game. You can do whatever you want here because both teams are really good right now. Who'd have thought in my lifetime I would see an elite Washington unit? That's weird. I'm still processing it. It's so weird. Usually they're bad or just kind of
They're going to win a playoff game before the Dolphins do.
Yeah, it's the funniest part, too. Yeah, they are. They're really gonna win a playoff game before the Dolphins.
Into our next game. I believe it's Ravens at the Steelers, right?
Yes. 1:00, Ravens at Steelers, right before the Bills play a pivotal AFC game. Ravens, Steelers in a pivotal AFC North game. The Steelers, their first division game of the season.
That's kind of surprising that we're already at week 11. They haven't played a single divisional game. But I'm going to go with the Steelers just because Connor kind of mentioned it earlier. They've had Lamar's number as of late. They're undefeated since Russell Wilson took the reins as a starting quarterback, which I said all along, Russ was the better play at quarterback. He gets the ball to his playmakers. George Pickens is thriving since he took over. Mike Williams even chipped in for a touchdown. So I think the Steelers are going to ride this momentum. I think they're playing very well for Mike Tomlin, and the Ravens' pass defense hasn't been exactly strong as of late. So give me the Steelers.
Paul?
This is it. You talked about coin flip. This is a coin flip. Ravens at Steelers.
What?
To me, the Steelers, they hadn't. This is the part of the schedule where I'm thinking this is the start to the end of the Steelers.
It's the biggest
They
Steeler
played
hater right
really
here.
good for the first
I
9
hater.
games
disagree.
of
I
the
think the
season.
Steelers are legit.
Steeler hater.
I think they win the North based on what I've seen so far this season, but I could be wrong.
It's just, they haven't played a division game all year. This is their first division game, and we're talking week 11 already. But part of me also thinks that the Steelers can beat the Ravens. The Ravens, play toe-to-toe with the Cincinnati Bengals. Are they ready for AFC North football? Connor, you seem like you say it every week. I'm going to take the Steelers in this game, even though part of my gut feels like the Ravens will win this game. But, beginning of the end, maybe it's not for the Steelers just yet. So they'll pick up a win.
All righty.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I let you go next because I need to put on a whole personality for this tweet, for this prediction. I almost said tweet, but this could have been a tweet too. But let me be completely realistic and honest with everyone. These are the games Mike Tomlin literally lives for. The chance to shut down the Ravens. This is the greatest rivalry in the NFL. I do not care what anyone says about Packers Bears. No, it's this one. Steelers Ravens has been predominant for the past 20 years. Mike Tomlin does not like losing to the Baltimore Ravens. And I want to bring up one other thing as well. Lamar Jackson, in his career against Pittsburgh, has a passer rating of 66.8 with 870 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. The Steelers are going to win this game, and the Steelers are going to the Super Bowl. I'm kidding, but I had to let the Yinzer out a little bit. But no, the Steelers are winning this game.
Contain it a bit.
No, they're playing. They're
because
not.
We get an extra
no, they're playing.
pick.
That's right. They're playing before the Bills. I wish they were playing that one on Sunday night. Then I really could have gone full Yinzer. But
they're playing before the Bills. It's the CBS game. It's the CBS teaser game before the game of the week. Bills hosting the Chiefs. Next game on our schedule is a NFC North battle. The Packers trying to hold their spot in the wild card, possibly win that division. But the Bears are teetering a bit. They're falling a bit. But a big division game at home against the Packers can rewrite their season. Do they rewrite their season?
I don't think so. I think I know Shane Waldron was just fired, but I think the issues run deeper than him. And the Packers are coming off the bye. They've owned the Bears as of late. I don't see that changing, at least this season, maybe next season when they get a new coaching staff and improve the O-line. But I think it's basically curtains for the Bears at this point.
Oh, man. I would agree with Ben 100%. You ever seen a singular play break a franchise? If you didn't, then go watch the Commanders' Hail Mary pass that was completed to beat the Bears, and you will have seen a play that has broken a franchise. We all thought it was the double doink a few years ago with Cody Parkey against the Eagles in the playoffs. Oh, no. That was the start. They finally got over it, but now this happens. So I'm taking the Packers as well. Bears are cooked. Their season is over, and the Bears still suck.
The Bears, I would agree with you, their season's most likely to be over at this point after firing their offensive coordinator. Seems like the locker room is in a bad spot at this point in Chicago. Give me the Green Bay Packers. All right. Interesting matchup here out in the Mile High City. Denver and Atlanta both fighting for their wild card. Wild card.
Denver or Atlanta's got the lead in their division. They got a pretty comfortable lead.
They do.
Last I checked, so I don't know about wild card for the Falcons. They got technically a 3-game lead because they've swept the Bucks, so the Bucks would have to finish ahead of them, and the Bucks kind of look depleted very
all
depleted
the
now.
injuries.
Maybe they sneak in as a wild card, but I think their season is most likely over as well. But I'm gonna go with the Falcons here. If I'm not mistaken, they have yet to lose back-to-back games on the season. Every time they've had a loss, they've responded very well under head coach D'Amico Ryan. So I expect that that trend to continue, and it should be a high-scoring affair though because their defense has not looked particularly strong, and Bo Nix is definitely playing better.
Bo Nix. We'll move on to what I was going to say. First of all, when did D'Amico Ryans become head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, Ben?
I meant Raheem Morris.
I had to say it. I had to. The opportunity was there, and I was taking it.
Yeah, my brain is fried right now.
Honestly, same. But in this game in particular, I'm also taking Atlanta, and I'm taking Atlanta for the reason you actually said it, Ben. When they lose a game this season, they have bounced back with a win. When it happened against Pittsburgh in week 1, they won against Philadelphia. When they lost to Kansas City, which they shouldn't have, they bounced back and beat New Orleans. So I actually have a very good feeling about Atlanta bouncing back to win this game. If you're the Kirko Chains fantasy football owners, start Kirko. He might have himself a nice game. Paul, go
Denver,
right on ahead.
This one is an interesting matchup. You get Kirk Cousins, you get Bo Nix, you get I'm blanking on the Falcons coach's name, but you get Sean Payton versus
Raheem Morris.
Talk about it.
Raheem
Come
Morris.
on.
Yeah, I know. He just said it. I just completely
All y'all's
blanked.
brains are fried.
But
Almost
it's
being
Payton
lava
versus
land right
Morris.
now.
Denver, coming off a loss just like that, has to motivate them in some way. They have the Chiefs beaten. They just have to kick a field goal, and they get it blocked. They're going to come in. They're going to have some sort of momentum into this game. I feel like they're going to be motivated. Give me the Denver Broncos for that reason. All right, division games. It's the week of division games. Seattle go on the road to San Francisco. This could make or break Seattle's season.
I still think Seattle's going to get absolutely demolished. McCaffrey's back. They're coming off the bye a week ago, so San Francisco is mostly healthy outside of Brandon Ayuk. But as we've seen, Ricky Pearsall is starting to get more involved in the offense. The Seahawks are kind of, it seems like, mailing it in on the season. They cut Terrell Dodson the other day. So I think San Fran wins big. I mean, they've had a huge advantage in this rivalry recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also say the exact same thing, simply because where we stand, I believe they should be playing at home.
They are.
So that's going to be a big advantage for them. I'm also going to take San Fran here for this one.
Same thing. I'm going to take San Francisco too. I mean, just for all the reasons you said. You guys both said the 49ers. Have full control over the Seattle Seahawks at this point. But furthermore, the 49ers are getting healthy, so they're finally getting their team back together to playing San Francisco football. So they're going to start playing back to their old ways. The Sunday night game to close out our NFL picks is the nightcap. The Chargers and the Bengals. Do the Bengals sneak back into a wild card spot, or is this it?
Well, Ben, go for it.
I think Ben's actually, you go, Connor. I think Ben's having some issues.
Oh, look at him! Yeah, he's absolutely frozen. Oh no, there he is. That was a great pause frame too, because it was him looking very flustered, like he had no idea what was happening.
I was like, wait, what's going on? You guys both went black, and I was like, wait, did they lose connection or did I lose connection? But did you hear?
That was funny.
Did you hear my spiel? I got 49ers.
No, we got your spiel.
Okay.
I think you went frozen after your spiel. So because then everyone else went. Chargers Bengals, Ben.
I think the Chargers are starting to take form, and I get it. He doesn't have great stats, and you kind of do need to, in the NFL, for whatever reason, it's kind of an award to the best player on the best team versus the player most valuable to their team. But to me, Justin Herbert has been playing at an MVP level as of late, and I just love what Jesse Minter is doing to that defense. I think that defense can shut down the Bengals offense because they still have yet to allow 21 points all season. And on the flip side, I don't know if Cincinnati has the recipe to slowing down Herbert in that ground game. So I believe it's in LA as well. It's a big opportunity for Harbaugh in the prime time, pretty much first prime time game in LA. So give me the Chargers.
Oh, well, all righty. Let that brother cook, because I am not going to let you cook. I'm actually taking Cincinnati to win this game, and this is all an agenda push. I need Jamar Chase to have himself another day. That's all I need.
He can have a day, but they could still lose.
True,
all right, Paul,
but
what do you got?
That defense of Cincinnati, lost on that game, even though, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase went off against the Baltimore Ravens. But for that reason, LA is going to win this game. They're starting to, like you said, Ben, they're starting to turn into form. They're starting to turn into, a legit contender in the AFC. Obviously, they're not going to win their division because of the likelihoods of Kansas City, but maybe next year they'll compete for the AFC West. Let's head over to our two college picks before we wrap up the night, as we all know that the college football ranking show is currently happening right now. So we'll see how that unfolds after some picks last week. Clemson has to go on the road to Pittsburgh in a top 25 ranked matchup in a chaotic ACC.
Yeah, they just went into Virginia Tech, which I would say is a more hostile environment than Pitt, and they handled business. I think Clemson's a more experienced team. SMU kind of exposed Pitt. I mean, I get Pitt's better at home, so maybe they have a chance, but I think Clemson gets the job done.
Yeah, same. I think Clemson will, in fact, get the job done as well, and I hate saying it because I hate Clemson, but I have no more dog in this fight. My team is awful. We just got our brakes blown off by Notre Dame. You think I care anymore about the season?
Yeah, so that's how I feel.
It's a bit rough. It's a bit rough down in Florida. They went 1-11
hang it up, Ben.
this week.
Just hang it up, Ben. We suck.
This isn't. If Pittsburgh wins this game, it just turns the ACC just like the SEC, in just a complete madhouse for the ACC championship game. Who gets the final spots in the final few weeks. So if you want chaos, you go Pittsburgh. If you want, a legit pick, you go Clemson. So I want to go Clemson. I think Clemson, will win this game. They're seem like they're the little bit of the better team. Pittsburgh loses I believe it was a close one to Virginia at home, but they didn't win. They got upset last weekend. The game of the weekend on Saturday, it's Georgia hosting Tennessee. This is a massive game for both of these teams, as it pertains to the SEC, but also to a college football playoff bid at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think Georgia's toast. They're at what now? 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't beat Ole Miss, and is this game in Tennessee?
It's in Athens. It's in Georgia.
I guess it's still a tough place for Tennessee to go in, but Tennessee's defense has really impressed me. And on the flip side, Georgia's defense has struggled. Look what they did versus Ole Miss. Look what they did against Alabama. I get they were both road games, but I'm going good old Rocky Top.
Oh, my God.
Yep. I think Nico Iamaleava, makes some big time throws, and I think Tennessee keeps it rolling. They've had a very solid defense this year.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, and it's just because I don't really watch college football except to watch draft candidates. I I said that Carson Beck apparently must have been told a few weeks back that he was about to be the next draft pick for the Carolina Panthers or the New York Giants. So his play on field purposefully degraded to avoid it. But that's just me. I know I don't really, like I said, I don't watch it
And
enough.
let me just say one more thing. Who would have thought
boy.
that Georgia would truly miss Stetson Bennett at quarterback, because
Right.
Carson Beck has looked rough.
Right. See, that's
Yeah,
what
he
I
hasn't
said.
looked
Man got
much.
told he's going to get drafted by the New York Giants and said, nope, I want no part of this organization, but I can't pull an Eli Manning. I am not doing this. Anyway, though, I'm taking Georgia to win regardless.
This
Okay.
has top 10 Pat McAfee troll when he starts to make his pick. You have
I
two
wasn't
really
even
good.
trying.
There's
trying.
both these teams have top 10 potential for a song where he starts singing the team anthem, and then he just stops and chooses the other team, just like in the SEC championship game last year. This is a hard one for me because Georgia's at home. They're 10-point favorites against the team maybe they should beat, but Tennessee has been playing great football all season, and they have to go on the road. Georgia went on the road and lost to Ole Miss last week. Brings questions about how good is this Georgia team. They can't be Ole Miss. How can they beat Tennessee? Give me Tennessee in this game.
Yeah, I think I am definitely the odd man out here, but I'm taking Georgia anyway. At least now I know that everyone that I used to know in Georgia won't come after me if they happen to lose. At least they'll be like, oh, well, at least he tried.
Well, that should do it for tonight's episode. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Follow us on X. Make sure to catch the Shout podcast with Ryan and Matt. Subscribe to their insider texts as well.
They're great.
And you can find us on all audio platforms as well as YouTube. As well on X at the Undercovers cast. So Paul, Connor, that should wrap it up for tonight. And as always, go Bills.
Yeah, Paul, you
Go
got any
Bills.
final thoughts on anything to say? Anything at all? I know you got something. You're looking at me
No, I'm
like,
good for right now. I'm
Are you
waiting. I'm
sure?
waiting on the. I was just about to segue right before we ended. I was like, let's segue to the college football rankings. It's been on my mind the entire show, but they haven't even released anything yet. So hopefully by next show, they'll release it before the show or during the show. We'll have something.
Maybe. Yeah.
Something.
Yep.
But go Bills anyways.
And I guess that'll end the show. And Joey Logano was an awful champion. Go Bills.
Okay.